saw a book by this title and I captured it for this particular slide, Don't Get Caught with Your Pantry Down. And this is something to which I understand we've got someone who has tremendous expertise in this area that's going to be teaching at this seminar, and I'm looking forward to hearing about this. Those of us that are young enough to remember what our parents used to talk about, how they would can food all the time. How many of you can food out of curiosity? Right now, you can't. Look at that. Now, that's something. How many of you just started canning within the last 5 years? Okay, so this is something, all of a sudden, this is becoming more and more popular. But my dad used to talk about canning all the time, and my mom. But that's a lost art for most people. And I honestly haven't got to that point yet, but I think I do need to learn to do that. And the important thing, of course, with this, if you read the governmental literature, they say have enough food for 3 to 4 days and maybe up to 2 weeks. My sense and feeling is that we need to have food a minimum of 3 months, probably 6 months, and it's not unwise to have even a year or more food supply available. The headlines yesterday was food prices have gone up more this past year than in decades. And if nothing else, it would be very worth your while to have food just to save money. Because the price of food is going to increase, and as we run into situations with the oil crisis, of course, everything is going to go up because the production of food is going to cost more and more if oil prices really go up. In fact, I think one of the most foolish things we've ever done is to allow ethanol to become part of our fuel. We don't need it. And the thing is, we're taking a huge amount of the production of corn and putting it into our gas tank as opposed to feeding people, and we're putting it into feeding some animals, and sometimes at a level which is not needed the way we do it, particularly when they fatten some of them up and inject them with steroids and produce other bad effects. There's a lot of things that we're doing to our food supply that is not healthy and it's not good, and our policy on ethanol is, I think, a very poor policy as a nation. So choose foods that do not require refrigeration, choose foods that do not require special preparation. I know that there's several options there where you can just have boiling water and stick it into the packets, and then you can have your food ready. Those are really excellent options. Select foods that require very little water or cooking, and avoid foods that make you thirsty, unless you know that you have availability of plenty of water. And decide how much food to store. And I appreciated what you had to say, Terry, that plan ahead of time so you aren't storing 6,000 pounds of flour. And decide how many people you're going to have to prepare for. Now, this is one of the things that I would like to just challenge you on, and that is, when you plan, don't just plan for yourself and your immediate family. If only 5 to 10% of people are prepared, there are going to be a lot of people knocking on your door. In fact, one of the things that I would like to challenge you on, and I have this in the workbook, is how to develop your network within your neighborhood. If you can get your neighbors prepared, and you do that collectively, that would alleviate a huge amount of pressure on you, because I'll guarantee you, if you're prepared and none of your neighbors are, you're not going to be able to deny your neighbors assistance and help. But if all your neighbors are prepared, then nobody's going to be immediately wanting to just have to go over and just get food supplies from each other. But this is another challenge I would like to really make to churches. In fact, what would happen if 100%, of course, you know, here you talk about dreaming, 100% of churches actually got ready with food supply and clothing and became designated as centers that could be meeting government requirements for shelter. If everybody got ready, then the need for this 5 to 10% of prepared people being ready to take care of the other 90%, 95%, it wouldn't be there. Everybody would have a greater share of the load of what was needed to be done. And so that's another reason why we need to be prepared as a neighborhood, as a family. And one of the challenges that I have, in fact, I'd be curious to know out of your own experience, how many of you had some difficulties getting other family members to really start preparing? Okay, there's the majority of the folks here. I've had people range from where they just don't see the need for it to others will just say in a cavalier way, well, God will just take care of me. You ever had that one? I mean, my heart really goes out to those that are single parents, totally stretched out, have barely enough time in the day to breathe. That's one of the places where I think the church can step in and do a tremendous job. In fact, one of the things I'm challenging churches to do is identify in your congregation those that are single parents who have to have unique problems with taking care of their children, like if they were at work and their kids were at school or at home or other places. What do you do with the elderly, the handicapped, those with no transportation? You could actually right now plan how to take care of those and have somebody assigned within the church to take care of 3 or 4 other people. You could actually have a whole grid worked out to where you have people responsible for others within your congregations when there were certain disasters, and that would be a way of alleviating some of this problem. If you try to do that last minute, communications will be down. You may not be able to notify people of certain things, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. Food storage is a very big, important thing, and one of the things that I think you should learn as a mantra, so to speak, is store what you eat and eat what you store. Begin a rotational system, and that's one of the things that we've done. My wife, whenever we buy any canned goods or other packaged items, we will write the date of expiration on there. But the truth of the matter is, many of these goods are still going to be good far past the expiration date. But as much as possible, we try to rotate these things. And if you need things like milk, for instance, and that, you're in a situation to where you need some things that are in liquid form, having been around the world, I realize a lot of products are made for no refrigeration. We're just so used to refrigeration, but you can get milk that's good for 3 to 4 months, 6 months, that's been pasteurized, and you can actually put that on your shelves and just rotate that out. So you don't have to just be buying fresh milk that has to be refrigerated if for some reason you need to have milk. So think about some of these things of buying items that don't require refrigeration. And then you're going to have a whole session on how to store food, place in a cool, dry area away from gasoline and other fuels, rotate your emergency food at least every 6 to 12 months, and label things is going to be a very important thing. Think of alternative cooking sources, candle warmers, fondue pots, charcoal grills. Terry showed you that quick heating up of water, that quick boil item. Charcoal grills, camp stoves, campfire or fireplace cooking, and solar cooking are options. And one thing I would like to make sure that you have in your armamentarium is a can opener, a mechanical can opener. How many of you ever tried to open up a can when you didn't have a can opener? Makes a Christian out of you very quick, doesn't it? I mean, I'll tell you, it just can be one of the most frustrating things when you just realize that there's good food inside there and it's something that you're hungry for and you want it, but you have no means to get it out. And the number of innovative ways that you try to figure out how to open up that can would be rather amusing if we sat down and talked about it. But have a mechanical can opener. It'll save you an awful lot of frustration. But when you stop and think about food, having food both in your grab-and-go bags at home, the car, and also at work. And again, I have that caveat of if you have it in the car, make sure it's not food that's going to be damaged by high heat. Also, think of food for your pets. That's going to be something else that you can easily overlook that. And having some sort of a portable stove or stove fuel would be also helpful. Waterproof matches is another thing that I would really recommend that you have. And then in terms of food, I really like the fact that they have a raised food bed garden. More and more people are coming into home gardening, and I saw those pots where you can actually plant food as well. And there's whole books that give you information as to edible ornamentals, things that you can eat that actually become and can beautify your yard, but yet when the push comes to shove, you could actually eat them if you needed to do so. So there's a lot of innovative ways. Next. That's all I'm going to be saying about food because you're going to be hearing a lot more about that later. But in terms of home readiness, think about money, and cash is king. One of my cousins' daughters was down in the Galveston area and read my book just a few days before Hurricane Ike came through. And one of the recommendations I have in the book is to have at least $500 worth of money at home in small bills. The last thing you want to do is hand somebody a $100 bill for a $5 object or a $2 object, and they then have no cash to give you back. So you need to have it in small bills so you can pay for things and not worry about the change, because if you're not going to often be able to get change from whoever you're buying whatever product from. And so have small bills. And I put in my book $500, but the truth of the matter is, as we are getting into more and more serious situations, and now that we're actually talking about the potential for having major banking crisis and major fall in the markets and really great uncertainty, my recommendation would be to have enough cash at home for at least 1 month's expenses. Whatever cash you have to spend, my recommendation, and if you can afford more, great, but then you have to really be concerned about where you're going to put it. And don't be like my brother-in-law at one time. I told him to hide some money. He hid it so well he couldn't remember where he put it. And so, you know, you need to somehow have more than just yourself know where it is, and have people that might have to have access to it. We've actually told some of our children where we are putting some things, so that if my wife and I are not home, and that, or if something would happen to us, where they would be able to obtain the money. But you need to have more than just yourself know, and put it someplace where you're going to be able to remember where it is. But I would have it, and put it in small bills. That's going to be very important. And then the story of my cousin's daughter, she ended up putting this money aside, and when the hurricane hit over in Galveston, she was 10 days without access to funds. And you know, when the major disasters occur, your ATMs are not going to work, the banks are going to be closed, you're going to have funds to live on. So those are very practical issues. Another thing in regards to money, one of the things that I recommend, particularly if you have to leave your home, if you had to evacuate, I have a money pouch. One of the things I would recommend, though, is not use those fanny packs that are external, where people could either grab them, or if you happen to be in a situation to where a tree limb caught on it and pulled it off your waist or whatever. They have money packs that can fit under your waist. I've actually carried thousands of dollars into countries at times, and I just kept it in a pack that actually fits behind the small of my back. You can't even, I mean, even if you feel my back, you would hardly know that it was there. I would put important things like passport and money and something like that, and then keep smaller amounts in my front pockets or in some other place have easy access to, because the last thing you want to do is fumble around trying to get something out of your pouch. But if you need to keep information, very vital information, put it inside of one of these pouches. They have them around the waist, they have those that go around your leg, they have those that come underneath your arm. But anyway, you get the idea. Having a personal pouch that's not visible would be important to put these kind of documents. Now, one of the things that I wanted to show you, and this is a little bit out of order, but it has relevance to what we're talking about, and that is having a USB flash drive. This particular thing that I have here is actually a memory care band, which has software on it that will allow you to enter in all your medical information that's pertinent, and it can list your medications, any allergies that you have. And this would be sort of like those bracelets that people have, or dog tags where they have medical alerts, like if they're allergic to something or if they're diabetic. This is a way that people, if they come across somebody unconscious, they'll know what to do, and maybe consider that as one of the causes for the person being in the situation where they're at. But these actually are wristbands, or they also have them as keychains, is another possible way of doing it. But you can change this information for yourself. It'll actually hold up enough information for 250 people. You could actually use something like this for a whole group of people if you wanted to, or everybody in your family. But since it's individual, let's say if you have an elderly person or someone with a really acute illness, or handicapped that you might get separated from, if you had something like this on their wrist, then if they were found by medical personnel, this could be taken off, plugged into a computer, and the information that's impertinent to their care would be right on that. But there's also enough space on here that you could scan in documents, important documents that you would want to be able to carry with you. And the nice thing about this is you could stick this into your pouch and have a USB. Now, just any USB will work. Now, you don't have to get a memory care band, but the memory care band is particularly good because of the fact that it has the medical information in a nice orderly way that you can go in and change. But that's the advantage of this. But in terms of storing your copying documents, if you already have the memory care band, then you could also use this for that purpose as well. But there are some of these that are out there as well if you happen to have any interest in that. But carrying your documents in that form, if you had them stored on a USB flash drive, you could actually put those documents in several different places. You could have it in a grab-and-go bag at home, at work, and on your person. So that's one of the reasons why this next section is home readiness, prevent identity loss and theft. And that's why this slide, it says safely docked, standing for documents. We always worry about identity theft, but my own family, my wife's mother was born in the Ukraine, and she was taken prisoner of war by the Germans when she was 17 years old and taken into Germany. And my wife was born in a displaced persons camp over in Germany and came over to the States through Ellis Island when she was like 5 years old. So I tell people all the time that I've been fond of taking care of refugees. And so I've lived with a refugee for now 40-some years and have 4 kids and 7 grandkids. So taking care of refugees is not all bad. And but the thing that they had to worry about was not identity theft, it was identity loss. They didn't have anything. And I've seen some of these homes over there with the tsunami. Can you believe everything is going to be gone? I mean, you look at a tsunami effect, or look at the tornadoes. Have you gone in to look at some of those pictures? That everything is literally gone. And so you need to be able to have copies of things in safe places. And one of the things I do go through very carefully in the book and workbook is storage of items, where you want to put them. Some of them are going to be in bank safety deposit box, though the only thing about a bank safety deposit box is that if we have a bank holiday or something, you can't have access to your safety deposit box. But one of the things that I did regarding some documents, I was teaching a course at Southeastern University, and I emailed myself some of my outlines and some of my PowerPoints and other things. I put it up on Yahoo. Then the next day my computer crashed, and I was relying on my computer for all these documentations. But because I had emailed it to myself and it was on a remote server, all I had to do was get up another computer, and I downloaded that stuff to myself, and I didn't lose a beat. And I had all my information. And that's one of the things that you can do. You can email yourself copies of whatever it is that you really want to have really safe, and not just rely on your backup on a USB drive or a hard drive or in an external drive. You can actually store it remotely, and then no matter where you are, if you've put some of these documents on a remote place and your computer's lost, destroyed, you have no access to it, you can get on somebody else's computer, download the information, and you're good to go. So anyway, that's just a tip if you hadn't thought about something like that. But the original documents for those things like marriage certificates and birth certificates and all that, you need to be sure that you have in a very safe place and store it digitally somewhere as well. And I go through this, I don't want to take the time now. Deeds, titles of vehicles, registration, credit cards, insurance policies. By the way, the best thing to do with credit cards for the most part is tear them up. Now, if you can't pay them off monthly, that's one of the things. Get out of debt. That's number one, getting out of debt. I have to use credit cards at times just to even make an airline reservation or to rent cars, but I make sure that I can pay everything off ahead of time. Credit card debt is a real problem in the United States today. And I'll tell you what, when you finally get outside, get away from debt, the relief is just so absolutely awesome. Documents, your wills, your living wills, your power of attorneys, and so forth need to be very safely kept, and safeguarding your business records. One of the things, how many of you ever had a major power surge that just wiped out your computer? Okay, there have been several. Obviously, having surge protectors usually will help. Once in a while, the surge can be so great that it'll actually overpower a surge protector. And so having the backups is going to be very important. And safeguard your business records. That is going to be very incredible. Next. What a difference a plan makes. You know, there are times, I would be curious to know, how many of you actually live in a place where you've ever been snowed in and couldn't get out for a week or more? Okay. That's another reason to be ready, right? I mean, if you just can't get out, there's nothing that you can do to buy. And so you need to have alternative heating wherever possible. And one of the things that we ran into in the last year and a half was the swine flu scare. Remember when they were talking about the possibility of having to quarantine people? And there were recommendations by many people. And I was asked to actually do a paper on preparation for what a college campus would do if a swine flu epidemic hit the college campus, and I had to kind of devise a plan for them. Well, one of the things was they had this scenario of having to quarantine the students. And then the other thing is places like schools would become infirmaries, really. That's where a lot of people would have to go because they have large dormitory space, had a lot of plumbing and other places. It's just it was just incredible the types of things they were predicting with swine flu. But quarantining is a major issue. Look what's happening over in Japan. What are they doing when they have that nuclear disaster within a certain area? They're telling people to do what? Seal up your home and stay in place. Don't go outside. Now what can you do if you happen to have don't have enough food? You know, what if you don't have alternative heating? Look what's happening. They've been without power, but if they had a stove, they could have kept themselves warm. Now they have a snowstorm over there following that. So these are all different reasons why we need to be ready. Next slide. Well, I'm going to actually skip over I'm looking at my time, and it's really getting away from me. I put this one up about expecting the unexpected. The swine flu, that was something to which they were actually, there were so many scares about that. I myself did not take the vaccine. They were really doing quite a bit to push that. And let me just say this, I actually have this in the workbook and also a new edition of the book about that. There are several things that will help in terms of fighting infection in general. One of them is get out and get some sun. Did you know that vitamin D is a good way to fight infection? And one of the things that we've done in our America is that we have so much sunscreen, we block out one of the beneficial effects of what God put in, was just the sun. Secondly, in August of a year ago, they actually published in the Journal of Pediatrics that a major portion of our young people today are vitamin D insufficient. And what they ended up recommending blew my mind. They recommended just taking vitamin D supplementation, 400 international units a day. And I'm just saying, listen, if you just stay out in the sun for 10 to 15 minutes a day, you can get several tens of thousands of international units of vitamin D, and just get out in the sun. And you know, then they're so worried about skin cancer that might occur after decades of exposure to the sun that they say put all this sunblock junk on. And I'm saying, God made the sun for a certain reason, and to give us warmth and give us vitamin D and other health things, and that's one of the ways to fight infection. And so another thing, and this is just an important point, elderberry extract. How many of you are aware of elderberry extract? Not too many of you. That actually has been studied by Israel and also by Norway. Elderberry extract is good when you have the flu. And it's a natural way. It actually cuts the incidence and duration of swine flu and other flu in half. And so elderberry extract is something I'd recommend that you have with you and have it at home because it's a natural remedy. And if you can't get out and get other medications or whatever, it would be a natural way of being able to help yourself. So I would recommend that. Next slide. When evacuation is necessary, have your route planned out. Now I happen to like our GPS systems. I really like GPS. But the problem is I've gone to certain areas where I can't use the GPS. In fact, Gary Adams, who works together with me, he and I were traveling here. We used our GPS, and there were several areas where we went. We had no phone connection. And so during that period of time, we lost the ability to use the GPS. I'm up in the mountains in North Carolina. If I drive in certain areas, I lose the ability to use my GPS. So you don't want to just rely on a GPS. At the same time, if you use the designated evacuation routes that the government has pre-published, that like with hurricanes, if you go down to Florida, they'll say this is the evacuation route. How many of you saw the pictures of the traffic jams in Jacksonville when they were trying to get out of the way of a major hurricane? You couldn't drive anywhere. You have to understand some alternative routes in case the major routes that they've designated are all blocked off. Now, one thing I did in the book, as opposed to what I did on this PowerPoint, I changed the arrow and had it point upward, evacuation route. I mean, there's some of us that are thinking about one day we have a different evacuation route, but in the meantime, while we're here, let's learn what evacuation routes we need to take. And the other thing is, don't just have it electronically. Have a physical map to where if for some reason you lose the ability to have the electronics, that you can actually physically go to a map and plot your way out. And have those in your car and also in one of your grab-and-go bags so that you can physically be able to get out and not just have to depend on electronics like a GPS and so forth. Home fires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, mudslides, earthquakes, loss of electrical power, volcanoes, tsunamis, radiation threats, chemical threats, terrorist threats are among the various natural and man-made hazards that may cause you to have to be evacuating from your home. And you may have to evacuate on a moment's notice. This is one of the things that I really tell people: if you do have to evacuate, leave in your home where you're going to go, if at all possible. Leave a note there. So if somebody comes into your home, people come to maybe rescue or find out what's going on, they will then have means of being able to tell loved ones or other people, if they're looking for you, where you have planned to go. Have prearranged transportation. If you have people that are handicapped or that are elderly or have no transportation, prearrange how you're going to help those people, either of your family or your community, your neighbors, or of your church. So that's have prearranged transportation. Many elderly people and many handicapped people have community transportation arranged for them to go to their doctor's visits, to go to shop or whatever. Those are not going to be available in times of crises. There just aren't going to be enough of them. And so that you as family members need to take that into consideration. The other thing is, I would say, learn to consider whenever your tank of gas gets down to half, consider that as empty. Keep your amount of gas in your car at least half full at all times. Because if you have to leave at a moment's notice, the last thing you're going to want to do is to have to stop and get gas. Consider your half-filled tank as being empty. The other thing is, I would say, designate one vehicle as your evacuation vehicle if at all possible. Don't try to take every vehicle with you. First of all, you can get separated. Some of you have more than 2 vehicles even. Many of you would have 2 vehicles, but many of you have even more than that. Don't try to take all your vehicles. If you can, select one vehicle with the best mileage or the best performance or the best safety if you have to go over rough terrain, and make sure that that's the one that has the better grab-and-go bag for the car. But you need to have it in a grab-and-go bag in all your cars, because you don't know where you're going to be. For instance, if something would happen that you couldn't go home, I stop and think of that scripture in the Bible that talks about the time when it's going to be so bad at a certain time when you see such and such happen. It says, don't even go back to your home to grab a bag. Just go to the mountains. And there are times when you are not going to be able to go home, and so whatever vehicle you're in, you need to have whatever supplies you need to have. And that's where, if you don't happen to have water in it, if you had some sort of water filtration process, so you could go wherever you are and at least get safe water for yourself. Next slide. From here to there, this is something that I particularly think is very important for children. Some children are latchkey kids. They're at home. And I say that you need to have prearranged, where does a child go? Often this will be at a teenage level. You're not going to leave real small children by themselves, though unfortunately I'm finding out that that's not always true. I'm finding out that there are kids that are 7, 8, 9 years of age that are by themselves at home because their parents are working. They try to not tell other people, but it's unfathomable to me to believe that that's really what's happening, but it's not uncommon in this situation. Have pre-planned where the kids would go should there be a problem. You know, if there was a house fire or if there was other potential danger and the child is afraid to be by themselves and needs to leave that area, have a prearranged place for them to go, whether it's a neighbor. That's why I'm saying, when you hear of these problems, this is where you go. And so that if for some reason there was a problem and your child needed to evacuate and they weren't able to communicate with you, you would know where to look for them. And so that's from here to there. Next slide. And have a place that would be both near their house and also maybe a more distant place if they had to go further. I have a whole list of checklists of what to do to evacuate your home, but because of time I'm going to skip over that. I'm going to go to the bare bones essentials. I have a list here of the bare bones essentials that you need to have in your own personal grab-and-go bag kit, and the things that I consider to be absolutely necessary is portable water filtration of some sort, water purification tablets or liquids, or the ability to be able to boil the water. Have some sort of energy bars or trail mix. There are some very good energy bars that are out there that will give you 300 calories or more per bar, and they're very small and lightweight. I have some examples in my own bag, but also some of these trail mixes also are very good, and so you should have those in the various areas at home and at work and also in your cars. Having a whistle is going to be very important. If you happen to injure yourself and you're isolated, and it's a way of alerting people where you're at, and you could actually then, if you hear somebody out where you're at and you hear them close by, having a whistle to alert them to where your location is important. A first aid kit. A small kit would be all that's necessary, but I personally would recommend make up your own. I have found that the kind that are available in a lot of these shops or just stores are just not adequate. Make up your own. If you don't have any other option, go ahead and buy those. I've even gone to the Red Cross and purchased some of theirs, but I even find some of the Red Cross ones not being what I would want. Of course, maybe that's because I'm a physician and know some of the things that I want, but I try to put my own first aid kit together, and I actually have included in my books the types of things I would recommend. Another thing is a smoke hood. I have that in my bag here. I have a few of them out there that Terry has, but think about the fact of if you're in a subway system, if you're in a hotel with high floor level and you had to go down the stairwell, if it may be filled with smoke, these hoods actually would be very useful to get out. They cover your eyes, nose, and mouth. It has a filter to help you to breathe during that time. It gives about 25 to 30 minutes of safe air. Most people that die from fires do not die of the actual burns, they die of smoke inhalation. And so that's important to know. Another one is good walking shoes. Make sure that you have good shoes in your bags. One of the things that was both funny and sad was when the 911 happened, one of the things that women had to do, there were many high heels strewn all over the streets because they couldn't walk on their high heels. They couldn't run in them, so they had to get rid of them and then run in their bare feet and risk injuring their feet and cutting their feet and that type of thing. So have good walking shoes. Also having some sort of a cord that Now this would be useful in terms of either tying some things up or even helping one get down from one story down to another story is another example. Extra money, I've already talked about that. And then having a multi-tool, a Leatherman kit, type kit, tool, multi-tool, something that has like pliers and knives and that type of thing, can openers in them. A multi-tool would be very, very practical. I have in here a mini pry bar. Would be also very helpful if you had that in your grab-and-go bag. If you were in an area like earthquake or whatever, and you had to try to get out, there may be doors that are jammed or you're trying to move things, having a small pry bar, waterproof matches, and also some sort of bandage scissors. That's what I actually have listed for my bare bones essential kit, and there's so many other things that can be taken. I go over that in the book as well, so I'm not going to take more time now. Next slide. Who you're going to call. This is one that really caught me off guard. My wife and I started going through my workbook, and we realized that we weren't doing what I had said. You know, I've so relied on my phone to capture all of the phone numbers that I wanted to have. Then I realized, well, the electronics can go down, or the phone's not going to be working, the battery goes down, I have no way to recharge the battery. I needed to have a physical list of who I needed to call and what their numbers were. And so we wrote that stuff down. I gave our kids and grandkids, and what are those numbers? If you don't have them memorized, don't rely on your phone to always have all that information. The police numbers, the fire place numbers, the hospital numbers, those things, you need a physical place in addition to just on your electronic means, whether it's the computer or the phone. You need to have it in a written form as well with you. And so another thing that I talk about is a contact information card that you can put and keep on your person, but particularly for children, having a contact information card for children that they carry with them at all times. You can plasticize it and keep it with them, and they can keep it in their pockets or in their backpacks at school or wherever, but some means of being able to identify who should be contacted, particularly with small children, should you get separated from them, and an adult find them and say, well, how do I contact the family members? And with a major national scenario, this is one which really bothers me, but it's one that I think I have to inform people of, and that is, should we ever have a major terrorist act? Let's say, for instance, they keep talking about the potential for a dirty bomb in New York or Chicago, or how many of you have seen that History Channel's animation of what would happen if a nuclear weapon went off in Washington, D.C.? Have you ever seen that? I saw that on the History Channel. It kind of blew my mind. They were talking about what would happen if something like that occurred, and they chose Washington, D.C. as the site. And I think it's wise to have prearranged with your family where you would meet if they had to leave where they're at and meet in certain places, or how you would communicate with each other if there should be a national catastrophe. It's kind of ominous to even think about that type of thing, but it's something to which if all communication is down, like for instance, how many of you have heard about the electronic magnetic pulse, that if something should happen, all of a sudden all communication is down. If you have to get together, where are you going to get together? And having that even thought out or planned out would be helpful. Next slide. There's so much more I could say about that, but I'm not going to now. We've come into a whole new age. How many of you Twitter, out of curiosity? Okay, about 4 hands have been raised. That's the younger generation that are Twittering. And but what I put this up for, my son found this slide about tin cans, you know, trying to communicate with each other. But there's a whole new means of communication from electronic media. And you know, some of the Iranian uprising and fighting was, and what was going on over there when people were rebelling against their government was through Twitter. They actually sent some of the communications through Twitter and Facebook and Skype and that type of thing, this type of communication. Learn to know a little bit of this. In fact, if you don't know it yourself, get your kids to help you out on that. But this is one of the ways of getting certain messages out to one another during times of crisis. In fact, I cover in my workbook the ways that are out there of having like 911 broadcast systems. There's a local church close to us to where the pastor has used a broadcast messaging system to alert the church family for various events for the church, but they could use it for disasters as well. It'll either phone them, email them, fax them, or send up some sort of communication. It will keep trying until it completes that communication with those individuals. And you could do that with your family or with your neighbors. Anyway, I go over that in the book if you happen to be interested in that. And the other thing that I recommend that you have is you have your neighbor's contact information. I have found this to be very important. Like when we've been out of town and we hear of there being some problems like ice storms occurring, difficulties, we've actually arranged with our own neighbors how to get into our house and to be able to shut certain things off or do things there. And I just had to do something within the last month and call in a neighbor to find out what was going on because of some bad weather, and wanted to inform them. Or when we're leaving town, I let them know so that they'll be aware of other people that might be around the house. We need to be alert and taking care of each other. Next slide. Grab and go bags. This, you need to have a grab and go bag at home, work, and in each vehicle that you have. Again, try to designate one vehicle that you put more stuff in than the others, so you'll know that'll be your primary vehicle if you have to leave. And don't get discouraged, just start. You can get overwhelmed if you just start thinking about this, but at the very least do your minimal grab and go bag, bare bones essentials. And how much to pack. If you pack stuff as a personal grab and go bag, make sure you can carry it, because you don't have to just assume it. You can throw it into your car and drive. If you ever had to walk away with the stuff, and as a general rule of thumb, don't pack more than 1/4 of your body weight. Is a good rule of thumb. And where you store your bag is very important. Don't store it in the kitchen, where fires are more likely to occur, that type of thing. Store it in a place close to an exit to your home that you'd probably be leaving from, if you can do so, if you had to leave in a major hurry. That's enough for that right now. We have so little time. Next slide. Meds to go. This is... by the way, in the grab-and-go bags, make sure you have your first aid kits. I have a lot of information in my books on that. Medications is a very, very major issue. And I would really advise you to become aware of certain alternative medicines because sometimes our standard medications are not always going to be available. Be aware of the types of things that you can avail yourself of that will be helpful to you. And just like I mentioned to you, elderberry extract is very good and is not something you're going to have to go to a pharmacy for. But some of you are on life-sustaining medications that are just absolutely important and that you must have them. If that's true, have at least 3 months' supply of medications. Because you don't know when you're not going to have access to pharmacies. Can you imagine somebody up in the tsunami over there in Japan? They've been having people on TV, they're saying, I don't have my medicines are all washed away. I can't go to the pharmacies have been all wiped out. But if you had some of these things in grab-and-go bags in your car, in your home, and at workplace, there's different places where you would have some of these items, and if you had 3 months worth of supply, that would be very helpful. But the other thing that I would recommend is if you have medications that are absolutely vital to your life and you carry them with you, I would have a few days supply on me. They're like so that you always have something with you. If you did get separated from home and you didn't have access to your normal medications, get a prescription written by your physician for the medications that you absolutely need. For certain medications, you have to renew that every 6 months because some pharmacies won't honor certain meds on a prescription that's older than 6 months. Others, they'll honor up to a year. But if you have a written prescription, then if you get separated from all your medications and you have to go to another area, you have a prescription that can be filled in the city that you end up going to. And so that's a very practical issue if medicines are a very important issue. Another thing is in your personal grab-and-go bags, you have to put the medications that you're responsible for, or that you're using personally. There are family grab-and-go bags that I talk about where there are items in there for everybody, but many times in a disaster you get separated from your family. The women go with the children to a certain area, the men go to another area, so make sure that wherever you go, that the medicines that you need go with you. And also I would recommend that you having certain non-critical prescription medications at home. If you know that your family as a routine matter needs certain medications fairly often, I would say get those medications at home. Now if it needs a prescription, get it from your physician, explain to him why you're doing it. And of course non-prescription meds, I would have certain things that are used frequently at home and have it on hand. I actually have tried to create for myself, of course I'm a physician and I end up getting medications for about 6 months in advance, and obviously I have access differently than what some of you would have. But I think if you would talk some things out with your family doc, that they would work with you on this so that you would have these items at home. So, and just remember that safe water is a medicine. Make sure that because you can get awfully sick from the wrong water. But another thing, don't forget about pet medicines, okay? That's a very, very important thing. And keep your medicines safe so that they're not going to be damaged by water or by fire. Next slide. Special needs situations. I don't know about you, but as we end up having an older generation, I know that my dad, who just passed away a few years ago, the last few years of his life, he was living with my sister, and he was in a hospital-type bed, could barely get up, always required somebody else to help him. But he had oxygen, a commode right beside his bedside. He had to had canes and walkers, and you know, if you're in an emergency situation where you have to evacuate, my goodness, it's hard to move somebody like that. In fact, my sister actually went through a hurricane in Florida with him there in the home, and they ended up hunkering down and just had to stay there in that place. They weren't able to evacuate. It turned out not to be as bad where they were actually at. But if you do have to evacuate, you have to pre-plan that and know how it's going to work out and not rely on your standard mode of moving someone. The other thing is, keep this in mind. If you can't individually move the person that you're trying to help, you're going to have to prearrange to have somebody else to work with you to get that person into a vehicle. So there's a lot of planning that you need to do in taking care of your family members with special needs. So elderly, handicapped, evacuation transportation. You need to know what route you're going to take, particularly for the handicapped. Flood emergencies. And by the way, don't be concerned about making unnecessary evacuations. It'd be better to evacuate and you turn out not having needed to than to end up having to need to and not being able to do it because you waited too long. I have lists of recommendations regarding medications, particularly for diabetics and others in the book. I'm going to have to move on. Next slide. Home fires is a very major issue, and I actually have listed in my book all that you need to do in terms of preparing for fires, escape routes for fires. In fact, this is one of the things you need to train children. Make it into a game. Pretend like saying, if you had to get out of this room and I blocked this door off, how would you get out? And just, you know, plan with them. How would they get out of their room? And have an alternative access or egress, how they're going to get out of the room. Escape ladders. If you happen to have a situation where you're on a second floor and you can't get out. In fact, the person that helped me with some of the proof texting in my book, as she was helping me, she said, you know what, my bedroom's on the second floor. The only way out of my bedroom is down this wooden staircase. I've got a window out the back of a balcony, but I need a ladder that I could actually drop down there to climb out of my home should my living room ever catch on fire. She says, I don't have a way out of my home. And so those are things you need to think of. And where you're going to meet if there's a fire, and that's where the here to there analogy comes into place. What you do with your documents, making sure that you have your documents adequately protected. Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers, smoke hoods, and that type of thing. Another thing is take a video of your home, of all your goods, because for insurance purposes, you're going to not remember all the things that you had if you ever had a fire. But open up your drawers, take videos, and that way you'll be able to have documentation. This is what I own. And I'll tell you what, insurance companies want to have you settle up with them right away, because They know that as you have more time to think about it, you're going to realize how much more you've lost. Don't settle just immediately. Let some time settle down to where you can think about it logically. But if you have something like a video record, you can actually go through it. It'll remind you of what you've had, and that way you'll be able to do better. Next slide. Now this, pause for pause, okay. Did you know that there's a 911 website for dogs and cats and pets? It's www.pets911.com. And you can actually go there. It'll actually tell you what hotels are pet friendly. You also need to be able to identify where you need to move pets if you can anticipate a certain disaster. How do you handle moving of large animals, and how you need to shelter your pets. There's also websites that I give in my book talking about if you have stray animals after disasters and you need somebody to take care of them. There's something like called Noah's Wish and others where you can call them, email them, and they will help you take care of these stray animals. But anyway, taking care of your pets is going to be very, very important. But the thing I beg of you, don't risk your own life for your pet. Please don't. I've seen that happen too often to where people trying to save their pets risk their own lives or other family members. And as much as I love animals, they do not hold the same position before God or before my own life as my family. And don't risk your life. And I've unfortunately seen too many people do that. Next. Remember, prepare for your horses and you'll be ready for your zebras. The next slide. I really believe this is the Lord that gave me this. I noticed this, that when 9/11 happened, you dial 911 for emergencies. But for the believer, you dial Psalm 91:1, dwelling under the shadow of the Almighty. And though 1,000 fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, no plague is going to come nigh your dwelling. In other words, they're all 911, but it all depends how you say it. Was it September 11th? Was it 911 emergency code, or was it Psalm 91:1? And I want to finish with this story, because unfortunately time has run out and have a lot more to say. I'd like to tell you a story of a young couple I know very well who have 3 children. One wintry storm day, their home lost electrical power. The temperatures were in the low teens. They did not have a generator, but a friend loaned them one to operate as space heaters to keep the family at least somewhat warm and to keep the water pipes from freezing. Little did they know that the generator was not ventilated adequately, and carbon monoxide built up inside the home, with the greatest accumulation upstairs where the children were sleeping. The day before, the wife had purchased a new smoke detector that also had a carbon monoxide monitor with voice alerting features. In the middle of the night, the alarm went off. Carbon monoxide high, carbon monoxide high. The family evacuated and the firemen came and measured the levels of carbon monoxide. It was at lethal levels and would have killed the children in a few hours. This story I know only too well. My wife and I have 7 grandchildren, and we could have had only 4. These were my grandkids. My wife and I daily pray for protection of our children, grandchildren, extended family. We pray Psalm 91. We thank God for His protection, and we believe God caused our daughter-in-law to buy a carbon monoxide monitor one day before. Be prepared. Don't be a victim.